And next we have Dr. Zhang Fengmin, the Vice Director of Wu Lieh-Teh Institute at Harbin Medical University in northeastern part of China. Professor Zhang is the Vice Director of Heilongjiang Provincial Academy of Medical Sciences of China and the Dean of Wu Lieh-Teh Academy of Harbin Medical University. He also acts as the Director of the Sino-Russia Institute for Infection and Immunity of the university. He's presently the Director of the Heilongjiang Provincial Key Laboratory of Infection and Immunity. Professor Zhang, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a great pleasure to meet all of you at this conference. Today, I would like to share a topic is a great contribution and heritage of Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh and its application for the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I hope it will provide useful information and the pictures for today's exchange and the current epidemic prevention and control. As you know, Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh is a very famous, distinguished physician and medical scientist, well known as a plague fighter, and was nominated by Nobel Prize in 1935. And she is also a pioneer of modern medicine in China because she has established the modern hospital, plague prevention service, research institute, and the Chinese Medical Association, and as well as medical education institution, such as Harbin Medical University. Also, we following Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh's life track, we are clearly discover that Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh's outstanding contribution were mainly achieved in Harbin from 1910 to 1931. Those contributions are also rich academic and cultural heritage left by Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh for Harbin. Mr. Wu came to Harbin because the unknown disease outbreak in Harbin, what is started from October 1910, and the epidemic increasing and quietly spread to the whole area of northwest of China within past 2 months. In order to control the epidemic as soon as possible, Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh was appointed by the Qing government as a chief medical officer and arrived to Harbin on December 25, 1910. Since then, Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh take his excellent career for fight epidemic. After arriving at Harbin, Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh quietly conducted an epidemic survey, but the etiology of the epidemic is still unclear. Therefore, on the third day of the arrival of Harbin, Dr. Wu carried out the first anatomy in China and found the Bacillus Yersinia pestis in the samples under microscope observation, and the etiology of epidemic was confirmed as plague, which mainly transmitted through the respiratory tract and different from the classical plague transmitted by bite of flea. Although the epidemic was identified at 3 months of the outbreak of the epidemic, it is still laying a foundation for the future prevention and control of the epidemic. Nonetheless, Dr. Wu still invented the Wu's mask, can also be said to the procedure of the current N95 mask, and implemented protective cloths. Disinfection measures was used to block the plague spread. And thereafter, Dr. Wu taken a city drain and lockdown, block traffic of railway, road, and ship, and organized specialist epidemic prevention team, including Chinese nurse doctors and Chinese doctors, nurse police, and others, even foreigners, set up the hospital and specialist transporter, such as an emergency car for the isolation of suspected patient. Here you can see the first suspected hospital. The isolation ward built by the railway cars, similar to the mobile cabin hospital currently. However, until early February 1911, after Dr. Wu organized the burning of thousands of infected corpses, what is mainly due to the cold weather, which prevented their burial, and the complete elimination of the plague source. Thereafter, the epidemic broke out and successful contained on 1st March 1911, until almost 2 months after Dr. Wu arrived. Then, with the support of the government, the International Plague Conference was carried in Shenyang, also said Magdan, from April 2nd to 28, 1911, under the chairmanship of Dr. Wu. And 33 experts from 11 countries held thematic discussion on 12 topics, including the plague epidemic and how to prevent and control it, and its impact on trade and so on. During the period, all members to Harbin on the spot inspection of the situation of plague prevention and control, and the animal infection experiment. And in 1912, on the recommendation of International Plague Conference, Dr. Wu established China's first epidemic prevention agency, the Northeast Prevention Service. It was set up in the Binjiang Hospital early. Then in 1926, and moved to the new building. And now is the Wu Lieh-Teh Museum and the Memory Hospital, which I think a lot of people have visited it in Harbin. During this period, Dr. Wu also set up more than a dozen modern epidemic prevention hospitals, including laboratory, museum, and exhibition hall in Harbin and surround the city. In order to find natural forces of the plague epidemic, the summer of 1911, Dr. Wu, together with Russia expert, conducted a Sino-Russia joint field investigation. We are covering the village and the towns in Russia, Mongolia, and China, and found out the mole model suffer from the plague as a possible source of natural infection. The study, later published in the Lancet, 1930, was the first report to suggest a link between mole model and the plague. And besides the establishment of the epidemic prevention system, Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh also established the first bacteria laboratory in China, in Harbin, what is used for the bacteria identification and pathological observation, even for the animal infection experiment. And here we can look at this picture is very similar to the this tract infection facility currently. Thereafter, based on the establishment of epidemic prevention system, Dr. Wu successfully controlled the second epidemic of plague from 1920 to 1921, and the cholera epidemic and so on in Harbin. It reflects Dr. Wu's idea, measures and epidemic prevention system is effective. However, in the facing the epidemic of multiple infectious disease, Dr. Wu considered the need for medical professional training. Thus, in 1926, the Harbin Medical School, one of the predecessors of the Harbin Medical University, was founded on the basis of specialist doctors and the relative facility of the Binjiang Hospital, and served as a first president. And the same years, dependent on the long-term research of plague, Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh completed the world's first monography of a treatise on pneumonic plague and established the pneumonic plague theory and won the title of plague fighter from Union. And then in 1935, he was nominated for the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology. Not only that, Dr. Wu also completed a lot of papers and monography in Harbin, including academic papers written in Chinese. In particular, Wu and Wang Jimin co-authored the world's first book of history of Chinese medicine in English version to introduce the history, the development of medicine. During the 1904 years development, Harbin Medical as a medical school founded by Dr. Wu has always carried forward the spirit of Wu Lieh-Teh and inherited Dr. Wu's academy and cultural heritage. In 2008, the Wu Lieh-Teh Museum and the Memory Hospital was built on the site of Northeast Prevention Service, and then set up the Wu Lieh-Teh Institute in 2015, Wu Lieh-Teh Academy and the Wu Lieh-Teh Biomedicine Innovation Research Center in 2021. Meanwhile, Wu Lieh-Teh Institute completed and edited the books of literature of Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh in 2015, and the works of Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh in 2021, and published articles in memory of Dr. Wu Lieh-Teh. Organized the Wu Lieh-Teh Forum for 9 times. This figure was made and published in our article for commemorating the 140th anniversary of the birth of Wu Lieh-Teh in 2020. Here, the Dr. Wu's great contribution was concluded on the establishment of China's modern epidemic prevention system, and that is considered as an important beginning of China's modern epidemic prevention system. And this was mainly summarized as 6 aspects, respective including the etiological investigation, prevention and control measures, multi-organism joint coordination, institution of the communicable disease research, prevention and control, academic communication and cooperation, and talent culture, cultivation and science popularization. Facing to the worldwide epidemic of COVID-19, we can see the core point of the current epidemic prevention and control is still based on the Dr. Wu's epidemic prevention idea and measures, such as mask, disinfection, isolation by mobile carbon field hospital, and set June and lockdown. Although there are novel developed diagnosis and treatment and other facilities. And it can be said that Dr. Wu's academic heritage still has a value of guiding the current COVID-19 epidemic prevention and control. I'll take an opportunity to cover the document reference also and the confidence on combating the disease epidemic and the pandemic currently and the future. Overall, we believe that the successful experiment is on the plague prevention control in 111 years ago, so to be contributed for combating of COVID-19 epidemic, and the purpose of COVID-19 prevention should be achieved in near future. And thank you so much.